Alright, so what we're going to do now is look at how to build out this scenario visually. So what we're looking at, we'll pretend is our template that we've built. Now in a real e-learning template you might have 5 or 6 slides, so it'd be slightly different. But for the most part it's going to be the same. I just wanted to do one slide just to show you how it works real fast. And what we have here on this slide, this is our template. We've got our 5 elements. So we have our character here. We've got our environment, which is the blue backdrop. We've got our text container. Then we've got our text here. And then we've got our buttons. And those are just all placeholder graphics. Now one of the things to keep in mind is if you're working with PowerPoint 2007, what's nice is you can actually build these in PowerPoint, these placeholders here, and just save them as graphic files and then bring them back in, and then they're actually images rather than PowerPoint objects. And what that does is that allows you to right click, and then as you can see you can change the picture. In the other versions of PowerPoint you can't do that, but you would just have to swap out the images rather than change the picture. And so using these as actual graphics rather than PowerPoint objects is going to make it a little faster for you if you're using PowerPoint 2007. So one of the things I want to point out before I actually swap out the images, one of the things I do is I actually build a folder that I call Scenario Assets, and then it would be in my folder for my project, or I would title the folder itself, CPR Training Scenario Assets. And then I'm going to have a folder for my boxes, a folder for my buttons, my character, my environment, and then with text that would just be in a document or some sort of text file or something like that. And then what you could do is you could pre-build this type of folder structure and just save it, and then whenever you need to use the folder you would just go ahead and right click, or you would copy it and then change the name of the folder. So I just like to keep everything organized when I'm working on my projects. So let's swap out the graphics real quick so you can see how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on the character here. I'm going to change the picture, and I'm going to choose her. And now you'll notice what happened is she's smaller than the actual character. So if I go backwards, you can see it's actually the width of the character, but it's not the same size. And that's what I was talking about in the blog post, is you want to make sure that if you're going to use characters, it's a good idea to one thing if you're building these templates is to kind of come up with some resolution or sizing for the assets that you're going to use. So for example, maybe all your characters are sized, I don't know, 400 by 300 pixels. And then all of your images that you use for characters are going to be within that 400 by 300. And then this way when you swap out your graphics, you're just swapping them out. You're not having to resize. So like in this case, I'm actually going to have to resize the image to work for my screen. I'm going to resize it here, and then I don't want her looking off screen, so I'm just going to go ahead and rotate that here. So I have her here. This is the character. And then what we're going to do is, in this case, we've got our text box. We're going to right click, change the picture. We're going to go to our container box, and I think I ended up using the grid paper short. And again, I'm going to scale this here, and I actually will make it a little wider even though it's not the way it would be. And then I'll just keep the text here as it is. We can resize the text. So this would be your challenge text, your scenario, to represent whatever the challenge is. And we're going to swap out the image here, the background. Now normally if I was building this in a full 6 or 7 slide scenario, I'd actually change my environment image on a master slide so I can apply it through those slides rather than change them individually on each slide. I'm going to go ahead and change the picture. We're going to go to our assets. We got our environment. I have this cubicle. Now I actually have 2 cubicles. I'm going to put this first one in here so you can see how this works. So now I've got this cubicle here. When you look at it, it's really detailed. You can see everything. I don't want that because it's distracting, and I really want the learners to focus on this area. So I'm going to change this to an image that I blurred it. So I blurred the cubicle. So now I add it in there. What you're going to get is the depth and the texture of being in an office environment, but you don't actually have all the details. So it'll cause you to focus on those parts of the screen that are actually in focus. I'm going to bring this right up here to the front. So we've got her up front. Now I'm going to swap out these. Oops. I'm going to swap out these elements. I'm going to change the picture. These are my buttons. So I happen to build buttons for my scenario. So I'm going to choice 1 button. And then I'm going to change this picture to choice 2 button. And change this picture to choice 3 button. And so now when we look at that, I've got them. And I can quickly change the layout on them. So let's do this. And I'm going to select them all. It's just right at the nudge of it, so let me do this. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to make them a little larger, and I can scale her down a little perhaps, and then I can take these, move them. They kind of look like post-it or sticky notes, so I'm going to rotate them a little. So I've got those. Those are my choices. And then I'd add, these would already have my hyperlinks and everything already built into that. And that quickly you can see I've got my scenario built. Now if I wanted to make have things stand out a little, I could go ahead, because I'm in PowerPoint 2007, I'll add a drop shadow to this, and then I can probably add a drop shadow to this image as well. And that helps them stand out a little. So there's your scenario built pretty quickly in just a few minutes, just swapping out your graphics. And so even though your placeholder looks a certain way, it doesn't mean that the final output has to look exactly like your placeholder. So the placeholder was a character, environment, container, and buttons and my text. And now if it were 2 characters, then I'd have a placeholder for a second character. So that's how you do that really fast. If you break your scenario up into simple chunks like that, then it's easier to think about the visuals for them. And then the main thing is just have visuals that kind of complement each other. And I'll give you a couple of pointers here. So like these post-it notes, I just built these in PowerPoint 2007. So I'll show you what I did here. So one is I created a document or a yellow square in PowerPoint that looks about the color of a post-it note. And then what I did is I just right-clicked on it and I saved it as a picture. Then I deleted the actual object and then inserted the picture. So now this is a picture file. And then in PowerPoint, they've got the new formatting option. So I've got this format here. And there's one that kind of has a this note look with the shadow and everything on it. So I've got that, and then all I did was change the border a little. So I'm going to make the border thinner. So you've got a thin border. So now you've got something that looks like a little post-it note. If you wanted to, you could put a pin up here and make it look a little nicer. And then what I did is I just went ahead and added some text. So let's go ahead. We'll add some text in here. And so this is some text. We'll make it larger so it fits on the post-it note. We can center it here. And then we'll go ahead and use a handwritten font to work with that. So now that I've got my handwritten post-it note, I go ahead and select my object, select my text, right-click on it, save it as a picture, and then I can save it. We'll just call this note. So now it's saved as a picture. And if I wanted to, I could delete this because I don't need it anymore. And then I can insert that picture, and that was in my character. So there's my note. It's a picture, and now it's actually a graphic file rather than a PowerPoint object. And so that quickly I've got my graphics. So I end up working in PowerPoint, doing a lot of my graphics inside PowerPoint. So it's just a tip there. Make the most of the tools that you have. If you have PowerPoint 2007, you've got some of those graphics and formatting features. If not, just use Paint.net or one of these other applications, and they can allow you to do something similar as well.